Hi, in this video we are talking about the non-pulmonic consonants, sounds in which the airflow is not produced by the lungs pushing the air out. Actually, in some of them, the air comes into the mouth. First of all, we have clicks. Clicks, most of them are just used as onomatopoeias in daily life, only we're not used to inserting them in speech sequences, using them as consonants together with vowels. But if you think of the bilabial click, this is just the sound of a kiss. It's if you prolong the sound, you can feel that you're actually sucking the air into the mouth. So how does this happen? The airflow mechanism for clicks is called a velar mechanism because there is a contact between the postdorsum of the tongue and the velum, and then there is another closure more fronted somewhere in the vocal tract. So you are trapping the air between these two places. So there are all these particles of air here, and then you lower the body of your tongue, so something like that. So you're increasing the volume, so the particles are more spread out now, so the pressure here decreases, and then when you finally open or you release the lip contact in this case, because there is a relatively higher pressure outside, then the air just comes into the mouth. Okay. So actually some clicks are produced with a back constriction in the uvula instead of the velum, so that could be a uvular mechanism for the airflow. Some people actually propose that clicks should be transcribed as contours, like affricates, for example. So there should be two symbols together with a ligature on top of them, so that you can specify the different characteristics of the back constriction, right? So you could do something like this, okay? If you want to specify that it is a velar mechanism, or you could do like this for a uvular, or if they are voiced, because sometimes they may be voiced, you can do velar or uvular, or even nasal velar or nasal uvular, and you can have different voice qualities, so it can be breathy, for example, or creaky, or whatever. So all those things you can transcribe this way if you take clicks as contours, but usually, just for the sake of simplicity, we only specify the place of articulation which corresponds to the front constriction. So yeah, we have the bilabial click, and then we have the dental click. Dental is the sound that we may make to express negation, for example, or disgust or something unpleasant. Okay, something like that. So that made into a consonant will sound like this. Okay. A bit more tricky is the alveolar click. So, well, as you may suppose, you're placing your tongue tip in the alveolar ridge. So the front cavity is a bit larger than in the case of the dental. That's what gives the alveolar a lower resonance. Sometimes, just to enhance this difference, you can also accompany the alveolar click with labial protrusion. So it sounds something like ka, aka, aka, ak. Then we have the palatal velar. It is kind of the imitation that we would make of a horse trotting. So you go ka, aka, aka, ak. Okay, ka, aka, aka, ak. It may sound similar to a cluster of K and L, but it's not really a lateral. This is the alveolar lateral click. This is like the sound of calling a dog. Like for the rest of the laterals, you can have a wider channel in one of the laterals. So usually if you're right-handed, it is the right lateral where you have more airflow. Together with a vowel, it sounds ka, aka, aka, ak. Okay. All right. And now let's talk about the implosives and the ejectives. Something that these two kinds of sounds have in common is that, first of all, you need to close your glottis. So if you remember from the video about stops, the glottal stop is the sound that we make, for example, when we say uh-oh, uh-oh. Okay, so that stop there, that's the glottal stop. So first of all, close your glottis, and then you're either lowering your larynx, like the whole body of the larynx for the implosives, or you're raising your larynx for the ejectives. Lowering your larynx is similar to a yawn, okay? So if you yawn, that will lower your larynx. Whereas to raise your larynx, you can think of swallowing. Okay, that will raise your larynx. In the case of the implosives, when you lower your larynx, what you are achieving is to increase your subglottal pressure, because now you have reduced the volume below the glottis, because now it's lower, and instead the supraglottal pressure is lower. So all in all, make higher transglottal pressure, which is what you need to guarantee the maintenance of voicing during a sound. So all the implosives are actually voiced sounds. If you look at the oscillogram, they maintain the amplitude of the voicing all throughout. So usually for a voiced stop, like a pulmonic voiced stop, the oscillogram loses amplitude over time during the closure, whereas in an implosive you can maintain the same amplitude or even increase it towards the end of the sound of the segment. So that's probably the most important characteristic for the implosives. So how do you produce them? For the bilabial, think of pronouncing a B and just make sure to maintain the voicing all throughout, and now try to produce a very long B, like during a lot of time. And you can't blow your cheek, okay, because obviously one way of maintaining voicing would be to do okay, so I'm blowing my cheek, I can keep going with the voicing for a little longer. But if instead I actually kind of suck my cheeks in, something like that, and I want to keep voicing, I will do ba, ba, ab, ab. Okay, so that's the sound for the bilabial implosive. And then you have ba, ba, ab, ab. Okay, and that's the dental. palatal, this symbol here is like the barred J that we saw for the stop, like the voice stop palatal, but with the hook here, which is characteristic of the implosives. So you go ga, 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 okay, and then they're more and more difficult as you go back in the vocal tract. Ga, 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 and uvula, ga, 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 ga. Okay, something like that. But if anyone, the most common implosive in the languages of the world is the bilabial. And finally, the ejectives. Ejectives are voiceless, and they are produced with your glottis closed, and then you raise your larynx. So the whole larynx body is going up. It's compressing the air in the oral cavity. So finally, when you release the front closure, it's like a trigger, right? So you're impulsing the air outside. Up, 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 up. Okay, and then dental. It's like spit. Okay, a little bit like. Okay, so and then this is more rare because it's actually a fricative ejective. And then the velar and the uvular okay. And then you also want to make the distinction between the dental ejective and the click So here the air is going out and here it's coming into the mouth. Okay. So those are the main differences between those sounds.